I'm 79 years old, and I spent 40 of those years in a marriage without love. Not hatred, not screaming fights and broken plates, just the absence of warmth, an empty space where something important should have been. I don't say that to make you feel sorry for me. I'm too old for that. I'm saying it because the price of keeping quiet about it was higher than I understood when I was 30 or 40 or even 60. When you get to my age, you start talking to yourself more than to other people. You replay scenes in your head. You see patterns you didn't see when you were busy running around, going to work, raising kids, paying bills. And sometimes you realize that the big tragedy of your life wasn't one single event. It was the quiet daily decision to say nothing, to do nothing, over and over again. That's what I did. I chose silence. For decades. I married my wife when I was 29 and she was 26. This was a different time. Where I lived, you didn't talk about compatibility or emotional connection. You got a job, you found someone respectable, you got married, you had children, and you kept the machine running. That was the expectation. She was a good woman. I want to be fair to her. She was reliable, practical, never caused a scandal. Our parents liked each other. She came from a stable family. She wanted kids. She went to church. On paper, as they say now, it made sense. What I didn't feel was that pull toward her, that feeling you see in young couples who can't stop looking at each other, who want to know every stupid detail of the other person's thoughts. I never had that with her. I liked her well enough, but I never lay awake thinking, I can't believe I get to be with this person. Before we married, I had one serious relationship, a girl named Ellen. She laughed too loudly, according to my mother. She had opinions about everything. My father said she would run over me in time. I remember the day my mother pulled me aside in the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, saying, "That girl is not a wife. You need something steadier than that." I broke it off with Ellen because I didn't want to fight with my family. I told myself my parents knew more about life than I did. They'd been married for 40 years after all. They must know something. I still remember the look on Ellen's face when I told her it wasn't working. She didn't cry, she just went quiet and said, "You're going to choose safe over honest, aren't you?" I didn't answer. I just let the silence sit there. That became a pattern. I met my future wife 6 months later at a church event. She was polite, modest, soft-spoken. My parents liked her immediately. My friends said, "She's solid. You could build a life with a woman like that." Nobody ever asked if I wanted to. But I was nearly 30, and back then that felt late. The people around me were settling down. Some already had 2 kids and a mortgage. There was a voice in my head that said, "Stop being picky. This is how life works. It's not a movie." So I proposed. She said yes. Our families celebrated. I went along with it like it was something that was happening to me, not something I was choosing. You know that moment in the wedding ceremony when they ask if anyone has any reason these two should not be married? I remember standing there thinking, I have a reason. I don't love her the way I'm supposed to. And then I thought, that's silly. Love is just a word. We'll grow into it. So I stayed silent. I smiled for the photos. I shook hands and cut the cake and danced and let people slap me on the back and say, "You're a lucky man." In the first years, it wasn't awful. That's important for you to understand. We weren't miserable every second. That would have made things clearer, strangely enough. We were just fine. We bought a small house. I went to work. She managed the home. We had 2 children, a boy and a girl. We did the things families do. Birthdays, school plays, Sunday dinners. If you had driven past our house, you'd have thought, there's a normal family in there. But inside, there was a distance I could feel even when she was sitting right next to me on the couch. We didn't talk about anything that mattered. We discussed schedules, chores, bills, what to make for dinner. We never asked each other, "Are you happy? Are you lonely? Do you feel loved?" I never told her what I had felt with Ellen. I never said, "I don't know if I married you for the right reasons." It seemed cruel, unnecessary, disruptive. and I was raised to avoid disruption. My wife wasn't cruel either. She did her best, but she was more comfortable with tasks than with feelings. If something upset her, she'd clean or rearrange a room instead of talking about it. I, on the other hand, would go quiet and sit longer in front of the television. We weren't fighting, we were disappearing. There were small moments that, looking back, were warnings. I remember one evening, I think I was about 38, the kids were in bed and we were both in the living room. I was reading the paper, she was knitting something. She looked up and said, "Do you ever feel like we're roommates?" She gave this small, nervous laugh afterwards, like she'd made a joke she hoped wouldn't land too hard. My heart jumped. I thought, this is it, this is the moment. Tell her the truth. Tell her you've been feeling that for years. But I didn't. I folded the corner of the paper and said, "I think that happens to everyone. We're just tired, it'll pass." Then I went back to the same article I'd been pretending to read. That was the price of my silence right there. A conversation that could have changed something turned into another layer of dust over the truth. She nodded, said, "Yes, you're probably right," and that was the end of it. We never spoke about it again. Years passed like that. They say time flies.
I'll never know what was possible because I never tried. At 79, there isn't enough time left.